All right, the desperation among Democrats to pass this health care bill has reached new heights. Now, they lack the votes in the House to jam this bill through, so their latest solution? Don't vote at all. Now, that's what House Rules Chairwoman Louise Slaughter is proposing. Now, she wants to create a rule that would consider the Senate bill passed at once and for all by passing a minor bill that makes corrections to the Senate bill. But then again, the San Francisco speaker could always take a page out of Harry Reid's playbook and create her own versions of the Louisiana Purchase and the Cornhusker kickback. Just think how many bribes this bill in the end could actually include. Now, meanwhile, a voice from the past has emerged, and Democrats are sure to be unhappy with what it's saying. It's one of their own, arguing vehemently against the use of reconciliation to pass, well, a health care bill. Here is Senator Robert Byrd back in 2001.
The Democratic leadership pleaded with me at length to agree to support the idea that the Clinton health care bill should be included in that year's reconciliation package. I felt changes as dramatic as the Clinton health care package, which would affect every man, woman, and child in the United States, should be subject to scrutiny. I said, Mr. President, I cannot in good conscience turn my face the other way. I could not, I would not, and I did not allow that package to be handled in such a cavalier manner. The reconciliation was never intended to be a shield, to be used as a shield for controversial legislation.
Oh, never intended. Oh, okay, to be used as a shield. So what's the future of the bill as it now stands? Joining me now with analysis, Wisconsin Congressman Paul Ryan. Congressman, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us.
Hey. Thanks for having me, Sean. Good to be with you.
All right, before we get into what for a lot of Americans is confusing but important, Nancy Pelosi, from my standpoint, if she thought she had the votes, she'd be on the House floor voting right now, correct?
That's right. Yes, that's right.
All right,
and they're not.
Have you done a whip count, or Eric Cantor, has he been whipping up the votes? Do you know how many Democrats are going to go against it?
We are. It's a fungible thing. We think we're around 10 down, meaning they are around 10 down. So we've seen different counts, and we think it's right around, say, 7 to 10.
All right, where's Stupak on this? Because he was saying that, in fact, if he didn't get the language he wanted and they were promising it in future legislation, he wouldn't support it. Do you know where he is right now?
I think he's in the same position. I think Bart he has not changed his pro-life views, of course. And I think he's in the same position. I think what they're trying to do is secure some kind of a promise that once this Senate bill goes into law, which funds abortions, that they'll follow up very quickly with some fix to it. That fix is a promise to fix it after the fact, and I, for one, don't see how they can keep that promise.
Yeah, they promised this. This whole thing came down with Ben Nelson, and that resulted in the Cornhusker kickback and the bribery for him. All right, now here's where we get into some complicated stuff, and I think this is really important, and I want you to explain this. Because as I interpret this, the House wants to vote on a rule. The Democrats want to vote on a rule that would say, in effect, that the House, even though they didn't vote for it, has already adopted the Senate plan, so then the House members would only need to vote on the rule. So those on the fence would have some cover. They'd say, yeah, we voted for the rule change, but I didn't vote for the actual bill. Do I have this right? Or
that's exactly right.
Words?
They pulled this trick 3 weeks ago when they raised the debt ceiling. They said, we're voting for a PAYGO bill. And, oh, by the way, the rule that brought this PAYGO bill to the floor just raised the debt ceiling by $1.9 trillion. But think of what they're saying here. And I think the president just last week said the American people want an up or down vote on health care reform. This is not an up or down vote. This is them saying this rule. What is a rule? A rule is just the way in which you consider legislation. So the way in which they consider this reconciliation bill will be a rule that simply deems 2,700 pages of policy a complete remake and overhaul of our entire healthcare industry, 17% of our economy, into law. So they will deem it into law while they go and pass this reconciliation fix. And that's basically what she's saying. Now, they came up with this idea before the Senate parliamentarian said very conclusively, you cannot pass this reconciliation bill in the Senate until the Senate bill is in law. And that sort of negates the whole purpose of deeming it from my perspective.
All right, let's go to the Senate parliamentarian, because the Republicans were asking for a ruling on this, and he ruled that President Obama must sign Congress's original health care reform bill before the Senate can act on a companion reconciliation package or any changes to the bill.
That's right.
Can you explain that process for most people that don't have a clue what's...
I know. This gets so inside baseball. the law that was written last year in the budget, written by Kent Conrad and John Spratt, the chairman of the House Budget Committees, says if a reconciliation package is to occur, it is to reconcile against law. That means if you're reconciling this health care policy, this health care bill, it must become law first. So that means Senate bill law first. These House Democrats must pass it as it is into law for then the Senate to be able to consider this bill, which we considered reconciliation, that only needs 51 votes to pass. And so they have interpreted the law correctly. What the House Democrats were trying to do with all of these shenanigans and all of these gimmicks they were putting together was to subvert and circumvent the law. And the House parliamentarian said, no, 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 the law is the law. You guys in the House could better pass this Senate bill into law if you ever want to consider reconciliation. And when you look at reconciliation, Sean, you can't put policy in it. You can't put pro-life policy in it. You can't put all these other things in it because reconciliation is very narrow. It's only fiscal policy. It's not authorization policy, we call it, which is you can't do things like abortion in it.
Look,
so you can't even fix those problems.
Look, I'm looking at the Cornhusker kickback. I'm looking at exemptions for seniors only in the state of Florida, the Louisiana Purchase, the people that thought it was arrogant to use reconciliation, that it was unconstitutional. You know, from my vantage point, we're looking at the most corrupt, the most unethical Congress that we've ever seen in our lifetime, undermining our tradition, undermining specific language that's in our U.S. Constitution about, they were very specific how laws should be passed before a president can sign it as it relates to, you know, separation of powers. And I can't for the, is this because they can't get the votes, so now they are gonna change the rules in the middle of the game or during the game?
We are doing this, we are here talking about this because Scott Brown won his election. Let's just be clear about that. The way bills become law, House passes a bill, Senate passes a bill, you go to what we call a conference committee and reconcile those differences, go back to the House and Senate and pass it. 60 votes in the Senate, majority vote in the House. Well, what happened in that process? They put this deal together on Christmas Eve in Harry Reid's office with all those gimmicks and those pork barrel spending items you just mentioned. They never intended that the Senate bill would become law. They just wanted to get something off the Senate floor, get it into conference, clean it up, make it ready for final law, then bring it back to pass. But what happened on the way to that process was Scott elected. They couldn't go back to the Senate. So then they said, well, you know what? We're just going to have to make this thing law. This thing we cooked up in Harry Reid's office on Christmas Eve, that's going to have to be the law of the land, overtaking this entire sector of our health care. And then we'll just tweak it a little bit with reconciliation to appease House Democrats who are concerned about it to get them to vote for it. That's what this is all about.
I guess this is what we get when you have radical one-party rule. I guess from my vantage point, that if the American people ever wanted to know what an out-of-control government would look like, this is probably it.
Yeah.
Because I can't think of anything far worse than this. What do you think politically the Democrats are thinking? Because obviously the American people have rejected this. And obviously they don't care what we think. Because the American people have rejected it. So they don't care. So they're going to force this down. They know that.
Yes.
And they're going to force it down our throat anyway.
The means justify the ends, and the ends are they don't know what's good for them. We do, and we're doing this.
All right. Is there any difference from what you were describing with the slaughter solution that we described in the opening of this segment? Is there any difference there? Between what
that's simply that's another ploy to have the means justify the ends. It's whatever to do just to get this thing into law. If we don't have the votes for it, we're going to come up with some cockamamie process to get the thing into law. And they're basically saying any means whatsoever, get this into law.
Are any Democrats privately telling you that this is politically, this is suicidal for them? Are they telling you that?
Yes, lots of them are.
All right.
I hear it every day.
Thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
All right.